Hi everybody, I'm just popping in to have a chat about how I have found that high performance people and very, very successful people are not immune to trauma, whether that's big T trauma or little t trauma. It's still there. What these people have been very successful at is transmuting the trauma or the distressing events into their rocket fuel for success. And that's taken them being able to channel that in such a way. It's taken them to successful heights, to amazing financial success, for recognition in their industry, and really taken them to very, very high levels of accomplishment, because they've been able to channel all of that energy in a positive way. But then there comes a time when they've reached a certain level of success and that method just isn't working anymore. And all the things they've channeled into their rocket fuel starts to take its toll in different ways. And they're aware that something's holding them back, and they know that things aren't quite firing for them. What's worked before isn't working anymore, but they're not quite sure how to put their finger on it. They're not quite sure what's happening. And I just wanted to explain to you as well that we often misunderstand what trauma is. So the more I've worked with these incredible, courageous, intelligent, successful people, the more I realize that trauma isn't the incident itself. It's the way that our nervous system has received the incident in the moment. So I've worked with people who had really horrific stories from birth, really, really horror stories of events happening from them since when they were little. I've worked with people who can't remember before the age of 7, and that's okay. I don't need to hear their stories. With the techniques that I use, we're able to dissolve things without that, because it's not talk therapy, which is, a relief to most of my clients. But it transfers into their lives in different ways. And oftentimes, because of the processes that they've used before strategically to take them to where they have arrived, they keep applying these processes but realize they're not working. And I remember having one conversation with somebody who was introduced to me, because of course it's all about who you know and reputation, and I've worked a lot off of referrals, which is where I've been so lazy with my marketing. And I was having this amazing conversation with this very high level coach, has, TED Talks, movies, just an incredible change maker, very intelligent, very accomplished, and came onto the call with me and said how brilliantly they were doing and how they've just kicked a massive goal in their lives and how things are progressing and they're changing and they're growing and all of the things. I was like, awesome. That's so great. It was so nice to meet you. I'm just wondering why you were interested in having this conversation with me based on, what your friend has said and introduced us for a reason. So I'm just wondering why that is. And then comes the big emotion. There's just this one thing. There's just this one thing that I'm coping with every minute of every day. And the weird thing is it becomes our norm. Like we normalize it and often minimize experiences so that we can survive them. And then once we start dissolving that, that person has just gone to exceptional heights, because even though they'd already achieved excellence, they have dissolved so much and been able to get rid of their triggers and their blocks. So they're going to even more amazing places, which is fantastic. But the thing that was holding them back was something they weren't really aware of in their consciousness. So it was a bit of a blind spot. And that's where my work comes in, because I work with the conscious mind, the unconscious mind, and the superconscious mind. And I find that in that very, very unique, bespoke combination, these issues are dissolved for clients very, very quickly. Right from the start, it's a very empowering experience. And I think that's an unusual blessing within these sessions, is that people come with this old paradigm thinking that dissolving and healing distressing events, trauma, however we want to package that, is going to be really hard and really painful. And it's going to take a really long time. And then they've heard from their colleagues and friends that when they've worked with me, it's been really empowering and really quick and beautiful. And it's like a coming home to self. And the whole process from start to finish has been just delicious and gorgeous and an act of self-love, basically. But I had a really interesting experience with a client the other day. Amazing person, not used to hearing the word no, not used to people challenging them, which is often the case with these very high performance people. And I may look like a drama teacher. This is what my children said. Mum, you look like a drama teacher. I said, great. I love drama teachers. Teachers are awesome. So I'm happy with that. But I'm also a bit of a badass when it comes to my work. So I really hold the space, but I hold it with authority. And this particular client was fighting me every step of the way, because there were so many conscious blocks that this person was blind to them, completely blind to them. And it was so interesting because as we were going through, they were challenging me at every moment. They were fighting me on every point. And I just gently but lovingly but firmly held the position, held the space, kept things going in the direction that they needed to go in. And this was a very complex, very intense, it ended up being a 2-hour session. And they can be sometimes up to 3.5 hours, depending on what my client needs. And we unpacked a lot, we dissolved a lot, and I held the authority within the session as I needed to do, which is something that they weren't necessarily overly comfortable with or used to in their position. And by the end of the session, so much had shifted, so much emotion had been released, so many amazing aha moments, realizations, just the empowerment went to the next level. And at the end, this person said to me, thank you so much for not buying into my bullshit. And I said, you are very welcome. But they left that session so much clearer, so much more in their power, so much more centered. And I've also had clients where we've done amazing work together and there's just something else holding them back. And it's more than one occasion. And I am very dedicated to my clients' elevation, healing, empowerment. And it was bugging me because I was like, what's happening here? What's blocking you? And on these different occasions with these different clients in very different times, it was a piece of furniture or a particular room or a particular object that the distressing events had attached themselves to in their memory, and we had to deal with that. And that sounds bizarre and crazy, but that's what was needed. Once we healed that piece, everything opened up for them. So this whole thing is very, very interesting for me. And also what's been super interesting is when I have worked with clients who have had just an extraordinary amount of big T trauma, so lots of big traumatic events happening in their lives from a very young age, when I've looked at their history, there is a certain process within what I do with the modalities that I use, where we dig into certain events and we start dissolving all of the emotional charge around those events, so that it completely frees that person from that incident. They're just completely free from it. And when I was looking at these people's events, there were so many big T trauma events that were pretty horrendous. And so from an outsider looking in, I would have chosen, say we're looking at the top 3, I would have chosen a certain amount, certain events that I would have thought that's definitely got to be an event that we need to clear. And what was so interesting for me learning as a practitioner was it was often not the obvious event that had caused them the most distress. So in these cases where there has been some big T trauma events in their lives, quite significant, the most distressing event that they could recall, that they could feel still in their body, was when their 8th grade teacher humiliated them in front of a class. Because on that day they were tired, they were vulnerable, their nervous systems were shot, and their bodies received that as being extraordinarily traumatic. And then because it gets locked in the body, then it's filtering into the way they lead their teams. It's filtering into the way they're communicating with their clients. It's filtering into the way that they connect with their children. And it's been quite an extraordinary learning curve for me, understanding that it's not the event itself, it's the way that we receive the event. And also understanding that really high-performing, successful people do often minimize the things that they've been through in order to survive and thrive. But on the longer term, that can start taking its toll. And when we dissolve that, my goodness, then extraordinary magic really rushes in. So I just wanted to explain to you that your trauma, your emotional charge attached to any sort of distressing event in your life cannot be measured, and it cannot be compared to anybody else's experience. Because oftentimes I've had clients who've had really, really, really upsetting experiences happen, and they've gone, but it's not as bad as somebody who's experienced this, or it's not as bad as my friend who experienced that. And it's really not about that, guys. It's about how we receive that distressing event on that day and how our nervous systems lock it into our systems. And so I want you to understand that there will be certain invisible things that can hold you back from your next level of greatness. And this dissolving of them, uncovering of them, and removing the emotional charge from them can be the most liberating, gorgeous, delicious, loving, sometimes like fun. Like I've been in sessions with clients and we have actually been crying, laughing, which you wouldn't think. It's like counterintuitive that you would be in that situation and be able to laugh. But because the space is so safe and sacred, it just allows for any emotion, any reaction, any thought, any feeling to come up. So it's a really beautiful experience, and it's a privilege for me, quite honestly. But I'd want you to understand that when we carry these distressing events or these big T or little t traumas for a prolonged amount of time, it does elevate our nervous system so that we are constantly at that heightened level of fight, flight, freeze, fawn. I can't say that after a couple of glasses of wine, so don't ask me. And that's when it starts filtering through how we lead, how we communicate, how we parent, how we connect with our audience, with our clients. And so it's something to be aware of, because we don't actually have to live with it. There are such amazing cutting edge techniques out there. There are such amazing practitioners out there. We don't have to live with this anymore, guys. It can be resolved and healed in amazing time frames and in a really gorgeous, affirming, wonderful, safe, empowering way. So that's my little live for today. I'm getting very excited about doing lives now that I've broken the seal, pop my cherry. So do comment below if you have, if this has raised any awareness within you, or you can relate to anything that I'm saying, because I've always loved to connect with you guys. So let me know. I'm sending you love. You have everything within you today to achieve everything that you want to achieve. And you don't have to live with this emotional charge filtering through your everyday experience. So I just wanted to reassure you that there's better things waiting for you. And remember, if you're going through a really tough time right now, this is just a chapter in your success story. Okay? Lots of love to you. Have a wonderful day. I will speak to you soon. Okay? Bye.